Hey everyone, as you've been training on your balance trainers, you might notice something else that affects our ability to stand on them. It's not just the balance that affects being able to stay on the bar, but also friction, and that comes from the bottom of our shoes. So we're going to be talking about the contact area of our shoes or our feet on the balance bars and what we can do to maximize that friction, maximize that grip, so that if your weight's not in exactly the right place, you can still recover from it. And you've probably noticed you're doing this when you're standing on your balance bar and you're just starting to tip forward and you're gripping with your toes, and you can really feel that you can just get it back and get yourself back upright again. The more friction we've got, the better the grip we've got, and the easier you're going to be able to stand on your bar. So standing from the side, if we have a look at getting into balance, if I tip forwards, you can see I could go a really long way forwards before my feet start to slip. And a question we get asked a lot is, what shoe should I wear for parkour? Now my advice has always been, get the cheapest shoes you can, because we trash them, we wreck shoes doing parkour. If I have a look at my shoes now, these are the ones I teach in, and there's a big hole in the toe there, that's straight through to foam. That's going to wear through to my toe in not a lot of time at all. But the kind of shoes that we recommend will be ones that have got a big surface area. When we talk about grip and friction on indoor dry equipment or even outdoor concrete metal, we want as much surface area as possible. If you think of the kind of tyres that are used in motorsport, Formula 1, MotoGP, they're slick tyres, so there's as much rubber as possible in contact with the ground. And the same is true for us. We want as much rubber in contact with our equipment as possible. I know people get confused because when you look at football shoes, they've got studs, and when you look at running shoes, they've got spikes. But that's because they're on completely different surfaces. We couldn't have studs or spikes to dig into metal rails because we'd trash the equipment and they wouldn't be very good on the floor. So what we look for is the maximum surface area. We're looking for as much rubber as possible in contact with our equipment. So when looking for a pair of shoes, I'd say as flat a sole as possible, and also flat in this plane. Don't like a really big heel. You want your foot to be as flat as possible. And there's lots of shoes out there that say they've got a zero drop, which means that they're the same height at the front as they are at the back. So when you're looking for a pair of trainers, as much rubber on the bottom as possible and a maximum surface area. So we're looking for as much rubber without big spikes or without big bumps and divots. And especially when we're looking at rails, really try and avoid those shoes that have got a big plastic arch, because if you end up landing on your arch, it's going to be very slippery. So we're looking at rubber and not a very thick sole. You'll see when I do some balance in a moment that we grip the bar with our toes. So I've got a shoe that can do this, that can do this. You know, I want them to be really flexible and really light. Now going on to standing on our rail, standing on our bar, and how we can make use of our shoes and our feet. We're going to look at stepping onto that rail again, getting down nice and low, holding my balance. And as I stand up, you can see that I'm really trying to grip that rail with my toes. I'm actually able to dig my toes around it. If you can see that from here. And that's going to give me even more rubber in contact with the rail. So instead of just being on top of the rail, I'm wrapping my foot around it a little bit. So the more rubber I've got in contact with it, the more grip I have, the more friction I have, and the better I am going to be able to stay on the rail. As we know, standing on the rail is one thing. When we come to take off or land on a rail, we've got to hold our balance. So today we're also going to be looking at jumping from one rail to another. So that involves getting our balance, then doing the jump, then landing and getting our balance again. So there's a lot that goes into this. If you've only got the one rail at home, you could jump from something onto your rail. You can practice jumping onto it and jumping off of it. And we can use something like a little marker on the floor so you know where you're jumping to. So we can still practice being precise. So what we're going to try and do is jump from one rail now and stick our landing. Instead of just getting there, showing our precision, we're now going to try and get our balance, see if we can bend our knees and get into our good landing position and hold that. Standing just outside the feet, jumping up, jumping over, and holding my balance. Until I know that I'm in control. Again, if you've only got the one rail, we could stand on the floor a little bit further away and try and jump to it and hold that balance. And for those of you just training on one rail, what we can do is put a little marker on the floor so we can practice getting onto our rail, jumping to a precise point, sticking our landing, and then jumping from that point back up to our rail. So we can still practice both halves of this. I'm going to use a little marker, just a pen on the floor. I'm going to pop my pen down on the floor. I don't want to land on it, I'm going to try and land next to it. Jumping up onto my rail. jumping to my marker. I'm going to turn around and go from the same position back up to my rail and try and stick that landing. So we're still practicing jumping from the rail and jumping back onto the rail. So if you've got two rails, you can jump from one to the other. If you've just got the one rail, you can break that down into two movements. Jumping from the rail to a point on the floor, turn around and jump back up to your rail. I've got one more advancement for this, which is going to be landing, getting our balance, turning round and jumping back the way we came. This is a tough one. I will be making another video about how we do the turnaround on the rail, but I'd like you to have a go at it. So we're going to jump from one to the other, or jump from the floor to the rail. Get your balance, don't rush this bit, and then keeping your body above your feet, turning around for 180 degrees, keeping your balance, and then jumping again. Let's see how you get on with that. So today we spoke about friction, we spoke about the soles of your feet. We want as much rubber in contact with the rail as possible. And we also spoke about jumping onto a rail, getting our balance, jumping from a rail, getting our balance before we jump, and again when we land. Remember, when we're working on balance, it's very important to do all of your moves in control. So there's no rush here. When you get onto the rail, get your balance before you go on to the next move. And the same is true when you land. Remember, you still have to get your balance. Get yourself nice and low if you need to, keeping your knees soft and keeping everything above your feet. Keep your chest upright. Let me know how you get on. I'd love to see some videos and some photos of you guys having a go at this at your own homes. I'll see you soon.